Get loud. Come on, Helium. Make some noise for Paul Farahvar.
Hey, guys. Okay, that's fine. I am from Chicago. I'm happy to be here. I get to tour all over. Last week I was in St. Paul, Minnesota. Cool city, 4 stars out of 10. It's fine. But 3 months ago I was in a place other comedians only wish they can go to called Star City, Arkansas. There's more people in this room than that whole city. Right after the show, this woman came up. She said, "Oh, you're from Chicago, huh?" I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "I got a cousin lives in Boston." All right. And then she leaned in. She's like, "Say, you look like Luke Bryant, but like in 20 years." I looked him up. We're the same age. I hate Arkansas so much. And the next day I was at a diner. I saw this couple argue, and I just heard this guy yell out, "I told you 1,000 times, Trish, I touched a frog. That's how I got the warts." That's not accurate. And I'm going to Florida next week to try to get COVID again. Yeah. It's like their number one export. You get to the airport, like, here's some oranges, you have COVID, go quarantine. The one thing that sucked about it for me is, see, we as comedians, we sometimes get jobs as actors. And a week before I got it last time, my agent called me. He's like, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. I got you a role. You don't even have to audition. They're going to hire you based on your ethnic background." I'm like, "Cool, what is it?" He's like, "You're going to be in a Christian rock video." I'm like, "Hell yeah." Or hallelujah, whatever they want, I'll do it. He's like, "I didn't even tell you the details." I'm like, "I don't care. I'm a Middle Eastern, half Muslim, half Jew. I'm the star of that video, right?" Like, I'm either blowing things up or I'm killing Jesus, so. I did that joke in Utah last summer. They did not like it at all. But we have live auditions now. I went to a live audition a few months ago. My agent's like, "Hey, it's an awareness commercial for HPD." I'm like, "Yeah, it sounds like a sex thing. I'm in." I went there and the casting director was like, "Before we start, Paul, tell us what you know about hepatitis D." I'm like, "I didn't know there was a D." He's like, "Well, it's not a speaking role, Paul. You just got to stand there and act like you have the symptoms." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, what are the symptoms?" He's like, "Actually, it looks like you have it. Let's just roll." I'm like, "Wait, what?" I'm happy we're doing comedy again. I'm a silver linings person. I think things are better now when we're done with all this COVID stuff. I feel like we evolve as society when we're faced with change. I remember when I was a kid, everyone's parents were travel agents, and it cost like $1,000 extra to go everywhere. Then the internet came out and changed everything for the better, right? Like, clap if you're still a travel agent. See, we got rid of that, right? Like, that's a positive. And I live in Chicago. I used to be able to walk in my neighborhood late at night, but with the high spike in crime, now I run. I lost 5 pounds. That's a positive. And before COVID, you used to go to the barber and they'd blow on your ears sometimes to get the hair out. Remember? They'd be like... Like, I hated that part because I didn't know what you're supposed to do if you got a boner. But the greatest thing that's going to happen when we're done with all this, so now that we're done with all this, is we can finally get rid of horoscopes and astrology, right? Because they're supposed to predict the future. They didn't predict any of that shit was going to happen, right? Like, they didn't say, "Be ready to be home a lot, crying, doing puzzles, watching a gay tiger wrangler for a month." Like, they did not. A lot of people tried to better themselves during the pandemic. My friend taught himself how to say the alphabet backwards in less than 15 seconds. I'm like, this is a stupid skill you're never going to need. He's like, "You're going to see it's going to come in handy." I'm like, "No, it's not. And you look like a loser because you'd be walking down the streets of Chicago just going like, Z, Y. You know how it goes. I can't do it. Sure as hell, he gets pulled over for drinking and driving. And the officer asked him to say the alphabet backwards as part of the field sobriety test. And he does it in 17 seconds to the amazement of the arresting officer. I say arresting officer because he still blew a .27. I'm like, all right. And I saw this commercial yesterday for pod storage and moving. Have you guys seen this commercial? They show this happy couple moving boxes into the pods. I'm like, that's not who uses pods. They should show a guy gathering his clothes from the grass that was thrown from a third-story window, where he's yelling up, baby, I can change, and then it just says pods. We think you can change too. And I went to a chain place to get a massage, and they're like, it's $200 now. I'm like, that's way more than normal. They're like, well, we have a membership plan. If you pay $50 a month, your third one is free. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do the membership plan. Don't do the membership plan. I'm not going to tell you the name of the place, but it rhymes with Cassage Penvy. Because when it's time for your free massage, they just beat the shit out of you. Like, they're allowed. It's in the contract. I showed up and she starts looking over the pre-evaluation massage list. She's like, do you want muscle tension release or relaxation? I'm like, what? She goes, you know what? It doesn't matter. I see it's time for your free massage. And her eyes got like really big, like she heard a bell go off in a boxing ring. And I know they're supposed to like use their elbows sometimes to get the knots out, but she was punching me in the kidneys. Like I heard her call me a piece of shit under her breath, you know? I created a whole backstory. I figured I walked in there, looked like someone she already hated, like her stepdad, or a guy that ghosted her on Tinder, or both. I don't know if she's from Arkansas. And she saw me and she's like, not today, Persian Luke Bryan, and then just went to town. My brother's an MD, PhD neurosurgeon. I'm here with you guys. My parents used to put his report card in the fridge to try to motivate me because he had straight A's. I never made the fridge, but last January I went and got an STD test, and I took the results and I put them on my parents' fridge. My mom's like, "What is this?" I'm like, "That's a pretty good result, right?" Like, all positives, you know. All clear. Two very different things. He did one cool thing for me, though. When I was 16, he went to the DMV in Chicago to take a picture, look like me. So instantly, I had a fake real ID that said I was 23 years old. I was the coolest kid in high school because I could buy everyone alcohol. I go to the same liquor store every day. The guy who owned it was the 75-year-old guy. His name was Raj. He thought I was my brother because I'd go in there overacting like my brother, right? I'd be like, oh, medical school's so tough. We had to dissect a frog today, like... But sometimes Raj would ask me medical questions, and I'd answer them. And one time I went in there, was freaking out. I was like, is this skin cancer on my face? Am I going to die? I'm like, I'm sure you're fine, relax. Like, well, you're almost a doctor. Will you examine me? I'm like, sure. And I reached over the counter, smashed his face a little bit. I'm like, oh, you're fine. It's just a mole. You gotta put Vaseline on it for a couple days. Yeah, Raj is dead. Of natural causes, I'm sure. I mean, he was 75 in the 90s. Also, let's not forget, Raj is the villain in the story. He was selling alcohol to a 16-year-old kid, so should have got a second opinion. But when you start comedy, you sometimes get these huge opportunities. About 10 years ago, I got an opportunity to open for a national touring comedian in Chicago. The only catch was I had to help the promoter sell 10 tickets. He's like, you could sell 10 tickets, right? I'm like, I could sell 10 tickets. I sold 2 tickets to my parents, full price. And the Friday night of the show, my mom calls me. She goes, oh, we're going to the hospital tonight to surprise your brother for his birthday. I'm like, his birthday's not till Tuesday. She's like, I know, see, that's why he'll be surprised. I'm like, but my show is tonight. You guys got tickets. You got to come. It's like, oh, can you just move your play to next week? I'm like, it's not a play and it's not even mine. It's like, huh. Well, you should just cancel it and come with us. I'm like, screw it. And I went. Like, He got called in to do brain surgery, so I did dick jokes for a bunch of nurses. Who's the real hero, you know? But I like going to Florida, hang out with my brother's kids. He has 3 of them. My youngest niece is 8. She bought me this silver jacket that I thought I was wearing, but I'm not. I'm like, yeah, I'll wear it all the time. She's like, yeah, it matches your hair. I'm like, all right, go fuck yourself. You're adopted. Which you shouldn't say to 8-year-old kids, especially when they have red hair and nobody else in your family does. I got in trouble. And my other niece is 14. She took me to her favorite store in Florida called Dollar Tree. I'd never been there before. I went for the first time. $23 later, I own a Dollar Tree. Like I bought a bunch of crap that'll last me 2.5 days tops. I got a water bottle that smells like gasoline. I'm sure it's safe. Some Twizzlers from 1999. A picture frame that disintegrated in the parking lot. They sell pregnancy tests at the Dollar Tree. In the impulse aisle, like they know their demographic. And the best part about the test is it's 55% accurate. That's a coin toss. I said that in Arkansas. A woman was like, that's why I bought 2, so it's 110% now. I'm like, that's not how it works. And my nephew, he's the oldest, he's 16. Last time I went to Florida, my brother was like, hey, will you take him to get his driver's license test? I'm like, yeah, of course. They didn't tell me that he failed that shit 3 times. Like, I feel like they're afraid to drive with him and they just wait till I come to town. That's okay, if Paul dies, he's just a comedian. And on the way to the test, he was driving. I'm like, you're not gonna pass this. After the test, I waited. I'm like, how did it go? He's like, I failed again. I'm like, well, what happened? He's like, I didn't stop at a stop sign. I'm like, that's a pretty big deal. He's like, you don't stop at stop signs. I'm like, I'm not your role model, bitch. Like, he's like, Dad doesn't stop at stop signs. I'm like, your dad makes a lot of mistakes, including a big one you probably didn't know about 16 and a half years ago. And my parents moved to Florida too. They sold the childhood home that I grew up in until I was 37. And they spent $17,000 on moving trucks. The stuff in those trucks was worth $900 tops. But they're elderly. I have elderly parents. They're the worst. I don't have kids, but I feel like I do now. We had to find a caretaker for my elderly father because he's a high risk for a fall. And I started interviewing all these candidates. And this last woman that showed up was this woman in her late 70s with a walker. I'm like, this job isn't for you. She's like, that's ageism. I'm like, I'll see you in court. Like, you'll never make it, you know? But my dad's of the age I gotta worry about the call, you know, the end of life call that sends me back to Florida. And I don't want to be selfish about it, but I'm a touring comedian. I'm doing some cool stuff. Like, I had 3 sold out shows one week, and I was like, oh, please, Dad, don't call this week. But other times when I'm in like Arkansas and there's like 20 people in the audience with 3 teeth total, I'm like, all right, Dad, it's time to go home, you know? Walk into the light. I actually made money by accident recently because I had Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. I feel like it's all fake Dungeons and Dragons stuff. The only reason I had Bitcoin is I was a victim of ransomware 3 years ago. For those of you who don't know what ransomware is when captors overseas take your computer and all your files hostage. And you have to pay them a fee to get everything back. It's like that movie Taken, but they have everything that you hold of value instead of one worthless daughter. Like I woke up one day, I had a text on my phone. It said, you pay us Bitcoin, we have all your files. I'm like, yeah, here's some money. They're like, Bitcoin only. And I had to go to a site to convert US dollars to Bitcoin to pay the ransom, which was half of one Bitcoin costing me $800 at the time. And they tell you when you're a victim, don't negotiate with them because they're terrorists. But I'm Middle Eastern, so I'm like, I'm gonna give it a shot. And my captors are super nice. They gave me all of my own stuff back for half of the quote ransom. I got a deal. And I kept the remaining quarter Bitcoin, mostly because I didn't know how to convert it back. I looked up how much my quarter Bitcoin is worth now that I have, only because of my captors. It's worth $9,722. So my captors are my best friends now. I'm like, what should we invest in next, boys? I'm like, do you guys also know about the stock market? They're like, you need to stop contacting us. I'm like, okay, but I didn't change my passwords if you want to do it again. I am Middle Eastern. My parents are from Iran. Yeah, that's the right response. They speak a language called Farsi, and I want to learn the language so I can communicate with my older relatives, and in case things go south here in the next couple of years and you guys send us all back. It's a cool language, except all the words are like a kid in 8th grade came up with on the fly, like when he's called on in class and he wasn't ready. Like the word for basketball player is tubazi, which translates to guy who plays with balls. The word for homosexual is kuni, which translates to guy who cuddles from behind. It should be the guy who plays with balls, right? The word for pimp, if you want to call someone a pimp, it's jakesh, which translates to guy who controls the opening and closing of the thing between the hooker's legs. Very specific. But the word for comedian, kuni, same as a gay guy. Just lump this all together. I only knew one word in Farsi growing up because I'd hear my mom yell it to my dad every time I broke something as a kid, which was kharanazan, which translates to don't hit the dumb one. I am Middle Eastern. I thought it was cool when Rami Malek won the award, Best Actor for Bohemian Rhapsody, first Arab American to win an Oscar. I thought it was cool because we don't have anyone in the arts as artists. I call myself an artist. I talk about myself on stage, but Middle Easterners are known as like doctors, engineers, and IT guys. He had the balls to go up to his dad and say, I'm going to be an actor. That's hard to do in our community. I know because I told my dad I was going to join a band when I was in college, and he's like, get out of my house. I'm like, Dad, you're overreacting. Calm down. He's like, calm down? Go live with Kurt Nirvana. I'm like, I think you mean Kurt Cobain, and he's dead. He's like, exactly what will happen to you. I'm like, we're in a cover band that plays Hootie and the Blowfish. No one's doing heroin. But I looked up Rami Malek. He comes from a family of doctors and a couple IT guys. But like, he has a sister who's a successful doctor. I just picture his dad having that passive-aggressive conversation with him to try to talk him out of following his dreams and get like a real job before he made it big. It's probably like, oh, Rami, come on in. I want to talk to you. Did you hear about your sister? She opened another private practice. Can you believe it? She has 6 private practices now. She has 220 patients a day. She's going to be happy and rich for the rest of her life. We're so proud of her. We're also very proud of you. You played the doctor on CSI Miami. For those few seconds, I felt like I had a son who was a doctor because you were so good. And last year, you played the 7-Eleven clerk on the Gilmore Girls. But you know, maybe it's time, Rami, to go back to school and get a real job. Dad, I'm on a show called Mr. Robot right now. It's doing really well. Oh, yeah, you're playing an IT guy. What a stretch. Okay, Dad, I was on a show called 24. I had scenes with Kiefer Sutherland. It was the #1 show in America. Oh, yeah, you played terrorist #3. We're so proud of you. I am single. It's cool when you guys are young and single, but this is your future if you don't try harder. I'm in denial about it. I'm just like I'm trying to impress my new stepkid, Aiden. Like, what's up? Let's go see Post Malone. My friends are all married. I'm their alibi for everything they do, even if I'm not with them. Like my friend Dave called me in a panic once. It's like, hey, I came home at 4 a.m. I told Sarah we're out celebrating your birthday. You got to cover for me. I'm like, dude, I'm in Florida right now. He's like, well, she doesn't need to know that. I'm like, she already does. She liked my TikTok story at the airport. He's like, why do you got a TikTok like a 12-year-old bitch? I'm like, why don't you know when my birthday is, bitch? But I like being older and single. I feel like it's better. I think when you're younger, as a guy in your 20s, every decision you make revolves around getting laid. I was the same way. Most toxic girl would call me at like 2 a.m. if I'm sleeping in Chicago and just be like, I want to come over. Come pick me up. I'd be like, yeah, sounds great. Where you at? She's like, I'm in Milwaukee. I'm like, yeah, I'll see you in 95 minutes. And I go. And the whole way back, I'd agree with everything she say too. I'm like, oh my God, you do look like Jennifer Aniston. No way, Nickelback is my favorite band too. We should ban all immigrants. My parents had it good for too long. But now a woman calls me at like 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm second in line in this Taco Bell drive-thru. I still get to have sex with young women sometimes, and they think I know what I'm doing because I'm older, but 90% of the time I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm tired. Like, we were having sex sideways, and this girl just goes, ooh, is this tantric? I'm like, no. I just had 3 Taco Supremes. I'm full. All my friends are married. They don't set me up with women anymore. They set me up with other guys in their lives who've recently gotten divorced to, like, hang out with me, like, on a play date. Like, I had tickets to a show. I called my friend Dave. He's like, oh, I can't go, but you should call my accountant, Bill. He just got divorced. I'm like, I'm not hanging out with your stranger accountant. He said, no, Bill's a good guy. Give him a shot. I'm like, all right. Let me see his picture. I actually went out with Bill. He's a good guy. He is. He had season 6s of the Cubs. He took me to the home opener. He bought me all my drinks. We split a hot dog. We got ice cream on the way home. He came upstairs for a nightcap. We watched This Is Us. It was the best date I've ever been on. Like, if he tried to touch it, I would have let him, you know? I do have this thing happening where strangers try to set me up. I was at a wedding last year. This couple came up and go, oh, we want to set you up with our friend. I'm like, all you know about me is I picked the chicken over the steak, and I brought a flask of rum to an open bar wedding. Like, you guys are horrible friends, or your friend has problems. Like, no, we just think you'd be perfect for Michaela. I'm like, oh, her name's Michaela. I hate her already. Like, what? She a 14-year-old gymnast? And then I started thinking, like, ask me some questions about my background, right? Like, ask me, have I ever failed a drug test at Blockbuster Video in the 90s? Yeah, I did. Did I play Can on the Wind by Elton John on my guitar and tell a girl that I wrote it for her? Yeah, that was 9 months ago. She's 25, she'll never know. Did I snort Oxycontin at a Waffle House parking lot at 3 a.m. in Tampa, Florida? No, I did not. Sarasota, Florida. But I think I could stay single for a little longer because I have good hair. If I lost my hair, I'd give up and get married too. I see the rest of you guys all ducking down. I'm projecting. You just see a bunch of bald guys beating the fuck out of me later. Like, get him, pull out his hair. I have to do a lot to keep this charade going. I take biotin, Rogaine, and Propecia. Propecia's a hair growth pill. They have to go to a doctor, get a prescription. My doctor's like, Paul, there's some side effects. I'm like, what are they? He's like, number 1, your sex drive is going to go down. I'm like, that's okay. I had a good run. He's like, number 2, your nipples are going to get extra sensitive. I'm like, how is that a negative? He's like, number 3, your ejaculate won't shoot as far. I'm like, that's okay. My competition days are over. Like, why are you telling me this as my doctor? Did he think I'd hear that and be like, wait, what? No distance? No propecia for me? I'm out. Also, how did they find out that that was the side effect? Were they doing clinical studies in like Denmark? Like, okay, come on in, gentlemen. We set up some bozo buckets here. Let us know how far you go. I don't know how Danish people sound. Mine sounds Luigi from the Mario Brothers. And I found out why they tell you that. The reason why they have to tell you that is if you're trying to get your partner pregnant, you need to be able to shoot far to hit the bell at the end. I'm like, wait, doc, so I'm going to have a full set of hair and I don't have to worry about accidental pregnancy? He's like, yep. I'm like, sign me up forever. I'm in. But I had a girlfriend, but she dumped me. She said I was emotionally immature. It's like, Paul, you're emotionally mature. I'm like, meow, 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 whatever. And I use the dating apps. I use a dating app called Bumble, which is a step above a garbage fire. I went on 3 dates with this woman, and she came over. She's like, just so you know, Paul, I'm not going to sleep with you. I'm like, yeah, I figured that. She's like, also, I'm not going to get naked or anything. I'm like, wait, why? She's like, that's intimate. We need to be in a relationship. I'm like, that makes sense. So I got off the couch and put my pants back on. And we went to bed. She slept over. In the morning, it's like, just so you know, Paul, you snore really bad. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that a lot. She's like, I'm like 99% sure you have sleep apnea. My dad's a doctor, so I know these things. I'm like, my dad was a doctor. You don't know anything. She's like, you didn't breathe for 23 seconds. I put it on Snapchat. Go to a doctor. I'm like, all right. So I went to a doctor. I didn't go to her dad because that would be weird, right? Like, your daughter thinks I have sleep apnea. Don't worry, she didn't put out like that. I went to my doctor. He's like, Paul, we tested you 5 years ago for this, and you didn't have it. Have you noticed it get worse in the last 5 years? I'm like, notice what? I'm sleeping. He's like, well, it's $1,200 for a sleep apnea test. We have to collect new data. I'm like, that's not going to work. I'll collect my own data. I'll call my ex-girlfriend, see if she'll sleep over, and we'll collect data. So I called my ex-girlfriend, but she didn't call me back. So I DM'd her on Instagram, but she forgot we were friends on Instagram, so she deleted me. So I messaged her on Facebook, same thing. So I reported her profile picture as offensive. She called me right back. She's like, Paul, you're being a loser, grow up. I'm like, come on, I'm just kidding, let's go get a drink. She's like, no way. I'm like, come on, one drink for old time's sake. She's like, all right, fine. We got one drink. We had more than one drink. We had a few more. She ended up sleeping over. We had a great night. I saw the next day that she added me back on Facebook as a friend, so I messaged her. I'm like, hey, that was a fun night. She's like, not for me. I'm like, oh, because of the distance thing? She's like, what? I'm like, never mind. She's like, you were snoring so bad. I'm like, oh, was it bad? She's like, yeah, same as always. I'm like, was it exactly the same as always? It's like, yeah, so I deleted her as a friend. Who's the loser now, right? Like, I saved $1,200. But I think women reward bad behavior with guys, and they like guys who lie to them. I learned it by accident. I was talking to a beautiful girl in Chicago about 4 years ago, but after like 2 hours, she started saying some weird stuff, so I had to come up with a lie to get out of the situation. I was like, hey, it was really nice to meet you, but I gotta go home and walk my dog. She's like, oh, you have a dog? I'm like, mm-hmm. She's like, what kind of dog? I'm like, chocolate lab. She's like, oh, what's its name? I'm like, Coco. She said, oh my God, I love dogs. Can I come with you? I'm like, sure. She came over, one thing led to another, and she ended up sleeping with me. In the morning, I woke up to her going, Coco! Coco! She came to the bed, she's like, Paul, wake up. I can't find Coco. Well, yeah, let's go find her. We spent an hour looking for a dog that didn't exist. Until I finally told her, I'm like, you know what, I gotta tell you something. There's no Coco. I don't have a dog. She's like, you lied to me to get me to come home with you? And I couldn't be like, well, actually, I lied because I was trying to get away from you. So I just told her, yeah, I guess I did. I'm sorry. She's like, oh my God. no one's ever done something like that for me. We both learned something that day. She learned that I don't have a dog, and I learned sometimes actions have no consequences. But then 2 months later, she called me back. She said, you know what, Paul? I lied to you too. I'm not on the pill. So we went to Dollar Tree, got a couple tests, 110% accurate. But this girl I dated years ago called me to tell me she's getting married, and she wants me to delete the sex tape that we made 14 years ago. I'm like, I don't have a VHS player. But then I bought one on Facebook Marketplace, and I watched that video. I'm like, I'm not deleting this. I looked so good 14 years ago. That's like my Super Bowl reel. I can't do 90% of that crap anymore. My body was a wonderland, Like, I was a Division I athlete. I mean, it was tennis for 3 days, but still. So I told her, I'm like, I'm not deleting this. I don't need you in it. We can have you digitally removed, put in a hologram of Tupac. I don't care. She's like, I'll see you in court. I'm like, I'll be there with my VHS player. Judge needs to see my work. She's screwed either way because I know my rights, because before I did comedy, I was actually a lawyer for a while. I was a lawyer for 13 and a half years, but on July 3rd, 2016, I stopped to pursue a career as a full-time comedian. That's a nice way of saying my law firm made that decision for me. I did insurance defense coverage litigation. That's what you do when you graduate ranked 203rd out of 204 students. But people always ask my legal thoughts when they find out I'm a lawyer, especially when things are in the news, they think I have legal insight. Like, what do you think of this whole Trump indictment, Paul? What are your thoughts as a lawyer? I'm like, unless the indictment has to do with a rear ender he had on I-90 involving damage to the bumper on a Ford Focus, I'm not really qualified to talk about it. Like, what do you think of this caravan of immigrants, Paul? What are your thoughts as a lawyer? I'm like, is it a Dodge Caravan? I live in Chicago. I live on a college campus. My parents dropped me off there 23 years ago. And the girl who lives across the hall from me is Amber. She's appropriately aged for the area. She's 23, which makes her 4 or 5 Olympics younger than me. We hang out all the time when she's putting the key in the door really fast, looking over her shoulder, A couple of days before New Year's, she comes to my door. She's like, hey, Paul, I just want to let you know we're having this huge New Year's Eve party. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll stop by later. I have other plans, but I'll stop by later. I had no other plans. But her eyes got like really big. It's like, oh, yeah, I mean, if you're comfortable, stop by, but I just came to warn you about the noise. Gut blow. New Year's rolls around. I'm on season 2, episode 2 of The Tiger King, and I hear them having fun. I'm like, screw this. I'm going to check out this party. So I go to the party. I knock on the door, and as soon as I walk in, that whole party stops, right? Everyone's like, who invited Persian Luke Bryant? So I just go my own business, sit on the corner there watching them all have fun. And then they start playing music from the 90s to try to egg me on. They played Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It. Like, Paul, do you know this song? I'm like, yeah, I know this song. She's like, did you play it at your prom? I'm like, yeah, we did. They're laughing at me. I'm like, all right, no one's going to make out with me at midnight. So after I ate all their brownies, I decided to go back to my apartment. And I wait till 11:55. And I call the cops on those little shits, right? Like, this is how we do it. 2 days later, Amber comes to my door. She's like, hey, Paul, cops came. I'm like, oh, that's weird. She's like, yeah, we got a ticket for the noise. You're a lawyer. Can you help us out? I was a lawyer. I didn't practice noise ordinance law. But I know there's something wrong here, right? Like it's a conflict of law or a conflict of interest. I don't know. I didn't go to class. But I know that they need a lawyer because of my call, and they're asking me to be that lawyer. But I really like Amber, and she's giving me $50 to go to court with her, so I took that case. 2 months later, we're sitting in court waiting for the complainant to show up. the man who made the call, or woman. We don't know because no one showed up and I won that case. So. That's how we do it. But I was alone during the pandemic. I like saying pandemic up here because when you say it in Florida, they're like, what's the pandemic? In Chicago, we were shut down, right? You guys were the same way. I didn't mind it in March of 2020 because all my friends who were married were like way worse off. They were stuck in a house with people they hated for the first time. Calling me all the time, like, what's it like where you're at? You get to do whatever you want. What are you doing? What are you wearing? I'm like, relax, put your pants on. But after like 2 months, I was like, this sucks. I remember I made a deal with God. I'm like, if I get out of this alive, I'm going to change my life, settle down, whatever. As this happens, a woman that I slept with 2 months before called me. So I didn't pick up. Then she texted me in all capital letters, we need to talk. I'm like, oh no. I did the math. She probably missed her thing. But I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this is God's way of telling me it's time to grow up. You know, I'm older now. I'm almost 45. It's time to settle down. So I called her back. I'm like, whatever you want to tell me, I just want to let you know I support you and your decision 100%. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Paul. I called you because I think you gave me herpes. What the hell? Because herpes is forever. A baby, that's temporary, you know? Yeah, they didn't like that in Utah either. I'm like, wait, that's impossible. I just got tested for everything in January. I was all clear. How do you know it's me? She's like, well, I've only been with 2 people recently. I'm like, okay, who's the other person? She's like, he's a professor of chemistry at the University of Chicago. You're a comedian I met on Tinder. I'm like, yeah, I think it's me too. So I called my doctor. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I thought we just tested for everything and I was all clear. He's like, oh, well, we didn't test you for herpes. I'm like, I asked for the works. Like, you don't know how the works works. He's like, well, we haven't tested you for herpes in 5 years. I'm like, 5 years? I have to contact trace for 5 years and call all those people? Like, I don't have either of their numbers. He's like, well, Paul, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're only taking emergency cases. I'm like, come on, you got to let me in. He's like, all right, couple questions. Have you been safe? I'm like, yeah, I wear a mask everywhere. Unless I'm drinking and I'll pull it off. He's like, I'm talking about condoms. I'm like, same thing applies. So I let me get tested. I don't know what it's like here, but in Chicago, it's like 4 knocks. You get to a door, there's a woman that greets you. She's like, sir, are you a doctor? I'm like, no. She's like, are you a rideshare? I'm like, this seems a little racist. She's like, we're only letting in first responders and essential workers. I'm like, you could have said fireman. She's like, you don't look like a fireman. I'm like, I auditioned for Chicago Fire. She's like, did you get the part? I'm like, touche. And you gotta wait 2 days for the results, but it feels like 2 years because you start thinking about every bad decision you made with women. You're like, of course, Lisa gave you something. She had empty Lean Cuisine containers all over her house. Or Jen, she open mouth kissed her neighbor's dog and her fingers smelled like taco juice. And a lot of people are getting really quiet right now, and some of you are smelling your fingers. Because it's a weird thing to bring up at a comedy show. I do want to remind you that we're at a comedy show. I wouldn't start a story like that unless it had a happy ending. This isn't an STD reveal party for me. I got my results, and I 100% do not have herpes, so thank you. But single ladies, if you match with a guy named Ben, who's a professor of chemistry at the University of Chicago, don't sleep with that guy. You guys are great. My name is Farahvar. Thank you so much.